Tools and techniques. Direct sowing versus transplants. Many people buy seedlings since they can't get seeds to germinate. Hearing that makes me sad, since growing from seed has so many advantages over transplants, especially when they are directly sowed where they are to grow. Doing this has many advantages. Direct sowing demands much less labour than pre-germinating in pots and then transplanting. Digging a tiny hole, roughly dropping in a few seed, then covering it quickly, is much quicker than digging a larger hole, unpotting a delicate seedling, transferring the root ball into the hole, and then carefully packing soil around it. The cost per plant is also dramatically reduced. When a seed germinates in place, it avoids damage to its root system structure, something that never fully recovers after starting out in a pot. This is why direct sowed plants tend to be more drought tolerant and robust. Transplants take a long period of time to grow root-hair connections to the surrounding soil, which means more time is often needed to irrigate them while they establish. Germinating seeds go through a period of genetic flexibility, allowing them to reprogram their DNA and forge relationships with symbiotic microbes in the soil. Germinating under artificial conditions deprives plants of this opportunity. Vegetable seed is a niche industry that is primarily oriented towards commercial growers. The seed sold in small packets to home growers is usually a low-quality byproduct of this more lucrative market. A lot of seed for sale is of such poor quality that even an expert gardener would struggle to grow it. I expect around a third of the seed I buy from commercial suppliers to be dead on arrival. People who only buy one packet of seed often find nothing grows, though they usually blame their own lack of skill for this result. Direct sowing seeds is an essential skill, but it demands the right ingredients are in place in order to achieve success. Firstly, the seed needs to be strong and sufficiently fresh. Seed strength partly depends on the species and variety, and the ability to germinate strongly is another trait that can be bred into crops. It also depends on how well the parent plant was grown, including mineral nutrition status in my experience. How seed was processed and stored also has a big effect, with seed that is kept warm and/or damp running out of strength more quickly. Some species, like parsnips, rapidly lose viability even when stored perfectly. Other plants, like canna, produce seed that lasts for decades, even without special conditions. Saving your own seed will give you ample quantities to experiment with and make re-sowing no big deal if you get anything wrong. I sometimes hoe out a bed of newly germinated seedlings and re-sow if the weed pressure is too high to bother hand weeding. This approach saves me many hours of pointless labour in exchange for a few weeks of crop growth. Remember, your crops should work for you as much as you work for them. The next most important ingredient for direct sowing is timing. Different species require different conditions, not just for germination, but to carry them through to cropping and beyond if seed production is desired. With Australia's highly variable climate, it isn't enough to simply look at the date on the calendar to tell you when to sow. The ideal earliest time for sowing species can vary by a few months in different years for me under extremes of weather. During prolonged droughts, sometimes an entire season will be missed. Saving your own seed and speedy direct sowing means that it is no big deal if you get the timing wrong, since it only takes a few minutes to re-sow the bed at a later time. The variety you choose to grow also strongly influences how easy it is to direct sow. Like any trait, this can be selected for with variety trials and breeding. Larger seeds are usually easier to get started in place, though they are sometimes more likely to suffer from pest damage or rot. The final condition is the state of the soil. Many vegetables will grow reasonably well for a home gardener in soil that looks nothing like the stereotypical crumbly black stuff in everyone's imaginations, though you should not expect every crop species to thrive in any particular patch of soil. The dream of recreating a mini supermarket in your backyard is a fantasy, since each crop species has different soil preferences. The rule of thumb is that any patch which grows a healthy crop of annual weeds should be able to grow a reasonable variety of vegetables with minimal inputs. Trial different crops and find the species that like your existing soil, and skip the bother of transforming your soil into something fundamentally different. Once all these ingredients are in place, then direct sowing is just a matter of moving sufficient soil aside, either in individual depressions or hoed rows, scattering the seed, then putting some soil to cover the seed. Larger seed generally tolerates deeper sowing, though during wet weather, shallower sowing is sometimes advised to avoid rot. Small seeds need to be covered with relatively friable soil to germinate readily. If your soil is too heavy, you can bring in better quality soil from somewhere else, or even try using a top dressing of potting mix, though not all seeds like touching the half-rotted pine bark waste which passes for potting mix these days. The smallest seed can be sowed on the surface of freshly hoed soil and stirred in with your fingers. For larger, individually planted crops, hoeing the surface soil into mounds can concentrate your limited soil resources. There are a few situations where transplants make more sense. When you first buy seed, it usually arrives in relatively small packets, so you only have a few chances to get things right. The seed is also of unknown viability, so planting whole beds of it could mean weeks wasted waiting for germination. For this reason, I usually germinate store-bought seeds in pots and go through the bother of transplanting and irrigating until established. Growing seed in pots demands good quality soil, and most commercial potting mix is barely tolerable to fully grown houseplants. A higher price bag of specialized seed raising mix is a worthwhile investment. There is no point putting $5 seeds in 5 cents worth of soil. I view this process of growing out bought seed as primarily an exercise in generating my own seed so I can shift to direct sowing once my own abundant, cheap, disposable, and vigorous seed is available the next season. Once you master the skill of direct sowing, you will be amazed at what you can achieve. I have sowed my favorite snake bean seeds in rock-hard clay at the end of a 9-month drought, only to have them germinate 2 weeks later without a drop of irrigation, rain, or even dew. This is a bit slower than under ideal conditions, but goes to prove the incredible power waiting inside the right seed, unleashed when it is put in the right kind of soil at the right time. The power of seeds lies at the core of good gardening. Follow these guidelines and you too can wean yourself off expensive and flimsy transplants. The Zero Input Agriculture podcast is a solo passion project built with my ample time and meagre resources. If you would like to support the show, then sign up for a paid subscription to my Zero Input Agriculture blog at Substack. As a reward, you can read all my past posts and listen to the audiobook of Taming the Apocalypse. If you prefer reading about the past and future of biological technology, you can read the ebook of Taming the Apocalypse through Amazon. And finally, please rate and review the show on whatever podcast app you use, since it helps other people find me. Or recommend the show directly to anyone who could use some inspiration to become a plant breeder themselves.